Welcome to a special edition of the Athletic NBA show here on YouTube. We're talking a massive max extension for Jaylen Brown back to the Boston Celtics. We got 5 years, $303.7 million going to Jaylen Brown's pocket. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We've got Dave DeFore. Dave, this seemed like something that was going to happen. Some were a little skeptical, like what's going on with Jaylen Brown? And I think we all kind of knew this is going to be the end result.
It's the NBA. It's what it always happens.
We need a little bit of drama before we sign a $303 million deal.
We could have recorded this weeks ago, and we know that, right? Like, there's no way in the world that the Celtics were not going to do this.
There's no way Jaylen Brown was not going to sign $303 million. It was going to happen. Yeah.
It was guaranteed. It's $304 million per hand he can dribble with, by the way. So
wow.
Imagine if he could go both ways, you know? I mean, I hope that every single time he turns the ball over to ball pressure, that the guy who gets the steal lets him know about it. Because man, that's a lot of money. And
it's a lot of money.
Man, Boston is going to be, it's going to be an uphill battle for them, I think, to just build a good team going forward. And this is the new CBA is going to make it even tougher. Man, it's a lot of money.
This is what happens, though, if you're good and you have good players. Is like you don't have an option here. And I know there's going to be sticker shock, especially when you start to look at what his contract will be in like 27 and 28, where he's going to be making basically $70 million in 28, 29. I mean, it's a lot of money. But by the time we get there, that's going to seem small. You know, like these contracts are going to continue to trend upwards, and it looks crazy right now. I remember when like a $20 million contract looked insane, and this looks insane now, but he's the first to get this. And it does look insane, but it'll take a couple of years. But by the time, even when we get to 26, 27, people are like, man, Jaylen Brown's on a pretty good deal. He's only going to be paid $69 million in his last year. That's pretty good.
I do think that this is the moment when we should all stop talking about the dollar amount, because the dollar amount is going to be insane from here on out. We're going to have $100 million a year player in the next 5 years, maybe. It's time to start using percentage of the cap and only percentage of the cap, because it's the only way that makes any sense. These numbers are fake. As far as I'm concerned, percentage of the cap is a thing that matters when it comes to team building and roster construction. And that's, to me, the tricky part. You're going to give 35% of your salary of your roster construction salary tool to a guy who's, got limitations. He's a good player. He's a very good player. I don't think he's a great player. This all NBA that he made this year, I'm not, I don't really consider him an all NBA level guy. I think he's just on the cusp of that. Yes, he won it this year, and he's a very good defender, and he's a very good offensive player, but he's not great. And that's one of the issues I have with this, giving him this sort of max contract, is that it does hamstring you. The issue, though, is you have to. The CBA forces you into this. And so now you got to figure out, okay, well, where do we go from here? What happens when our other guys are up for extensions?
I mean, it's just about keeping Jason Tatum happy at this point, who is like their main guy, and he will get paid a substantial amount of money here in the next couple of years. But this is just the price you pay for drafting well, for having a team that's a contender. This is just part of it. And I think Jaylen Brown he's only 26. He turns 27 around the start of the season. He still has room to grow and to get better. So I think it's going to end up being a fine deal. Is it a lot of money? Yes. But I think he is a player that would have gotten this from any team in the NBA. So I don't know. This is how you have to operate as a team that has some of the best players in the league. Like, he's a top 20 player in the league. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, 20, 25, something like that. I think, once Seth's tiers come out here in a couple of months, we'll really know where he is in the league. But I think that the bigger question, Andrew, is, what are we, 1 year away from Jaylen Brown trade request watch? I mean, that's really the story of this, is that free agency is dead. And now guys, they sign the huge extension. and then they ask out. And so, when do those questions start? Does this mean he's going to want a little bit more shine on him, even though he is very clearly the number 2 guy on the team and at times does show up when Jason Tatum doesn't? I wonder if, maybe a little bit of a status change for him might be important. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm already thinking to next summer when he's starting, we're starting to hear rumors that he wants to get traded somewhere, because that's just how it seems to work now.
Yeah, I mean, they're working in Kristaps Porzingis, who is not a small piece of your team. I think offensively, he's going to be a bigger part of your team than Marcus Smart was, and he's going to want shots. I mean, he took 15 shots last year for the Wizards,
was good.
And was legitimately good. 23, 8-3. Like he's a good player that's going to need touches. And when you talk about Marcus Smart, I think that they were probably going to move on from Marcus Smart no matter what. But like Marcus didn't take as many possessions, and he was willing to take a backseat. I mean, he took less shots last season than he had the past couple of years. It's around the same ballpark, but he's willing to take more of a backseat. So I think there is going to be some interesting dynamics at play with this team. And Jalen's going to come in, highest paid player on the team, highest paid player in the NBA. Now, when you say that, it does sound a little ridiculous. But this is just his timing. It's just the timing of it all for him. And I think Boston's in a great spot. I think they're a team that can go win the East again, that can get back to the finals, and maybe they have enough to get over the hump now that they have a little bit more low post scoring. But Jaylen Brown, just securing him, not having any true funny business with, well, maybe he wants a no trade clause, or maybe he wants this. It's like, okay, come on. No, like he's going to, the deal is going to get done. And it did. And I think it's good for the Celtics just to have certainty heading into camp of who your guys are. And I think Jaylen could come back as an improved player too.
Well, and that's actually what needs to happen, because this team needs a playmaker. Losing Marcus Smart, and I know we think about Marcus Smart as a flopper, as a a defensive guy, but the truth is he was one of their better playmakers the last 9 years, or however long he was there.
Yeah, that's right.
And Jaylen Brown has to improve. He's got to improve his handle, as I mentioned, joking a little bit. He's not that bad, but he's got to improve his handle. But he's really got to improve his playmaking for others.
Yeah,
he's going to have to take a little bit of a lesser role as far as a play finisher and become a guy that is more of a setup guy. And you mentioned Porzingis 15 shots. I don't know if Porzingis is going to get 15 shots in this offense.
Yeah, I think you're right.
When he gets those shots, I think Jaylen Brown needs to be part of why he gets them.
Yeah. As a coach, how hard is it to improve playmaking overall? I feel like that's one of the toughest things to improve. I think you look at like shooting and defense as like things that can be coached. But then I think playmaking is just more like natural feel and just how you actually play the game.
I mean, how many guys really tangibly improve as playmakers after the age of 26? Not a ton. I mean, you kind of are who you are by this point. And this is the prime of his career. It's early in the prime of his career. And I'm not saying he's reached his ceiling or anything like that. He, of course, will get smarter with more reps and more time. But I just worry about this team going forward, losing Marcus Smart as a playmaker. Who knows what's going on with Brogdon and whether or not they're going to move him. They tried to move him this summer. I think it's hugely important that Jaylen Brown take on a lot of the playmaking role. Improvement is, I don't know, it's hard to gauge. It's not linear. Mm-hmm. So he could just come back into training camp. Maybe he's got a slightly more elevated playmaking role, and he just rises to the occasion. You never know. If anyone was going to do it, I'd bet on Jaylen Brown. I mean, he got this money. He earned this money.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a guy who is still young, still promising, has improved. His handle is way better now than it was early in his career. His playmaking and recognition is way better than it was early in his career. I mean, he's gotten better, I would argue, every single season. So there's no reason to think that he can't become more of a kind of point forward guy for them. So we'll see what happens. I mean, a lot of it's going to be, what does Joe Mazzulla's offense look like in year 2 with a full training camp? Everyone coming in hopefully healthy. Robert Williams was kind of in and out last season. Porzingis is going to be a huge release valve for them. Look, Boston, they very well could have made the finals this last year. made the finals the year before. They're probably top 3 for sure in the East next season.
Yeah, definitely.
And Jaylen Brown, and if Jaylen Brown can just elevate his game this much as a playmaker, it helps them exponentially.
Thanks so much for listening and watching this episode of the Athletic NBA Show on YouTube. Please subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button if you will, please, and stay locked in to everything at The Athletic.